So I am very happy to introduce our next speaker, Valeria Fascianelli. Valeria is a postdoctoral researcher at the Center for Theoretical Neuroscience at Columbia University, and she collaborates closely with experimentalists in the very spirit of this session to uncover the computational principles and the neural geometry that underlies cognitive processes like decision-making and emotional states. So thanks, Valeria.
Thanks, Francesca, for the introduction, and thanks, Rory and James, for inviting me. So today I want to discuss with you how neural representational geometries reflect behavioral differences in monkeys and recurrent neural networks. So there are many aspects of a neural representation that we can study. So for example, we can focus on the response of a single neuron to an external stimulus, or we can study the response of an ensemble of neurons, or we can study the geometry of a neural representation, which is the aspect I've been focusing on. So we'll start by defining what the representational geometry is and its computational implications. Whatever aspect you think is the best to be investigated, you have to prove that it correlates with behavior. So ideally, we want to be able to directly manipulate the neural representation in vivo and to check directly the behavioral output, which might be very complicated. Usually, like in neuroscience, individual differences are considered like an inconvenience, but actually today I want to show you that it might be a resource for us to better mapping the relation between representational geometries and behavior. So we'll show you an example where investigated the representational geometries into monkeys performing the same cognitive task, and also in recurrent neural networks, where we found like this nice relation between representational geometries and behavior relying on individual differences. So our work as computational neuroscientists is to find regularities and in the seemingly disorganized neuronal activity. And to do that, we usually start with a few assumptions about the external world. So let's assume that we live in this boring world where there are only 4 objects. You can immediately recognize some regularities. So we can group these objects together because they are both cylinders, and we can group these 2 other objects because they are spheres. So we can do that based on the sensory experience, because cylinders share the same shapes and spheres as well. But we can also do that based on the semantic point of view, because we can stack on each other the cylinders, which is something that we cannot do with the spheres. And also we can collect together the yellow objects and the blue objects. So we can do that because we have the concept of shape and color in mind. What about if I group these 2 objects together? We don't have any label for this kind of category here. So it means that not all the concepts are equivalent. And probably we don't have any label for this kind of category, for this kind of grouping, because this grouping here is not useful for generalization purposes. So the overarching question is, what is the neural representation that makes the concept of shape and color like special concepts, or at least more special than this category here? So to answer this question, I will analyze the response of an ensemble of neurons. So here I'm going to consider just 3 neurons for visualization purposes. And I will represent the response in the firing rate space, where each axis here is the firing rate of a different neuron. So for example, I can represent the response of these 3 neurons to the blue sphere as a point in the firing rate space, and I can do the same for the yellow sphere, and so on. So this is what we define the geometry of a neural representation, which is the set of distances between points representing different conditions in the neural activity space. Or more intuitively, it's the spatial arrangement of these points, each corresponding to a different task condition in the firing rate space. So in this geometry here, you can immediately recognize that I can train a linear decoder to classify the shape here and the color. But there is something more beyond the linear decodability of these 2 variables. Indeed, if I project all these instances into this subspace, the red axis here, the representation of the shape, we say that is abstract because it's disassociated from any instance. It means that if I change for example, the color of the objects, the representation of the shape is invariant. And this is also true for the color. If I project the instances on the green axis, The color is abstract. For example, if I rotate the cylinders, the representation is invariant. So the next question is, okay, how can I quantify to what extent a variable is in abstract format or not? To do that, I will rely on linear decoders. So I want to check whether, for example, the shape is represented in abstract format. So we'll train a linear decoder, which is this red plane here, to classify whether it's a cylinder or a sphere only using, as a training set, the blue instances. And thanks to the geometry, so thanks to the spatial arrangement of the points, this plane, without any retraining, will generalize right away to the yellow instances. And this is what we call the cross-condition generalization. And the measure that we use is the cross-condition generalization performance, which I will refer to as CCGP, which is the performance of a linear decoder in generalizing two conditions not used for training. And we can do that thanks to the parallelism of the coding direction, which are these two red lines here, which are parallel. So I've been talking about this kind of geometry, which is a very specific kind of geometry, where I put the points at the vertices of a square in a low-dimensional scaffold. But I might also have another kind of geometry, where I just put the points in random position in the finite grid space. So in terms of decodability, these two geometries are equivalent. In both cases, I can linearly decode with high accuracy the shape and color. The main difference in these two geometries is about the generalization properties. So I showed you that I can linearly train a decoder on a subset of conditions that will generalize to the other condition thanks to the parallelism of the coding direction. And I haven't shown you explicitly, but if I train a linear decoder to classify the shape only on the blue instances, it will not generalize to the yellow instances because now the coding direction are orthogonal. Okay, so now I want to show you an example of how we can study the representational geometries in real data. So we analyzed the neuronal recordings from 2 monkeys in dorsolateral prefrontal cortex performing the visually cued rule-based task. So the aim for the monkey in each trial is to choose a target, either to the right or to the left, according to a rule that is instructed in each trial. So the trial starts with a fixation period where the animal has to maintain the fixation on a central spot. And after that, there is the cue period. So there is the appearance of one of these 4 geometrical shapes. And each shape instructs a rule. There are 2 rules. The stay rule instructs the monkey to choose the same target chosen in the previous trial. So the animal has to remember his previous choice. While the shift rule instructs to choose the alternative target. So the animal, at the moment of the recording, knew very well the association between visual cue and rule. So let me make an example. Let's assume that there is the appearance of the yellow square. The animal knows that the yellow square instructs the stay strategy. So if it chose the right target in the previous trial, it's now required to choose right again. And in between, there are other periods. So after the cue period, there is the delay. And after the go signal, the animal can make its choice. So today, I will show you the analysis, the results of the neuronal analysis during the cue presentation, because it's a very critical moment during the trial, because the animal has already all the information to elaborate the correct response. So as I said, they recorded activity from dorsolateral prefrontal cortex of 2 monkeys. So the question is, are the main task variables represented in abstract format or not? And the main task variables are the previous response, which is right or left, the rule, stay or shift, the current response, right or left, and we also decided to investigate, to analyze the geometry of the visual features. And we label it like shape in terms of whether the whether the visual cue is a rectangle or a square. Before jumping into the neural results, I want to mention 2 possible examples, 2 possible strategies to solve this task. One is a more rule-based strategy, where the animal actually realizes that there is a rule for which 2 visual cues might be clustered together, so 2 cues for the stay rule and the other 2 cues for a shift rule. So the geometry should be a more low-dimensional geometry that might be good for generalization purposes, for example, across tasks. Or another possible strategy is a lookup table, where the animal actually did not realize that there is a rule, so the animal just learned the association between previous response, visual cue, and current response. So this strategy might be mirrored by a more high-dimensional geometry, which is not good for generalization purposes. Okay, now I'll show you the results. Let's jump into the brain. So this is the cross-condition generalization performance on the y-axis. Each different color dot is a different test variables. And the black bar is the chance interval. So the first monkey represents in highly abstract format the features of the visual cue, followed by the current response, while the rule in blue here and the previous response are not abstract. And if we look at the representational geometry in second monkey, now the scenario is completely different, because this monkey abstract with high CCGP the rule, and the shape is not abstract. So yeah, and the shape is not abstract. So okay, we found this striking difference at the neuronal level, which was something new. So we decided to analyze carefully the behavior. So we first look at the overall behavioral performance of the two animals, and they learned the task very well. So they could perform the task with very high accuracy without any significant difference. So we decided to go deeper and to look at the reaction time, particularly at the pattern of reaction times in every different condition, particularly for different rules and for different shape of the visual cue. So, okay, this is the neural result for the first monkey, which abstracts the shape. And this is the average reaction time as a function of different rules. And the marker here is the actual visual cue. So we found that the monkey that abstracts the shape shows a reaction time that significantly changes with the shape of the visual cue regardless of the rule. This is a tiny but significant difference. And if we jump to the second monkey, so the monkey which abstracts the rule, this monkey shows a totally different pattern of reaction time. So now the reaction time significantly changes with the rule regardless of the shape. Okay, so this is just the top three component of a multidimensional scaling plot. Each point is a different task condition. So this is like the geometry. And as you can see, the second monkey shows a highly structured geometry in these two almost parallel planes, while this other monkey, the monkey which abstracts the shape, actually has a higher dimensional geometry. So it might be possible that these two monkeys, particularly the first monkey here, is implementing a more like lookup table strategy, while the second monkey is relying more on a rule-based strategy. So to better understand what's going on, to better understand the relation between representational geometries and behavior, and in order to have higher statistics, because unfortunately we have only two monkeys, we decided to train many recurrent neural networks to perform the same task performed by the two monkeys. So this is the architecture of the network. The input is like there is a scalar here, which is a fixation, where basically at every time step it tells the RNN whether to maintain fixation or not. The visual cue is encoded by one hot vector, one encoding the shape of the cue and the other one encoding the color. And we are also giving the previous response as input to the network. So this input is passed through an expansion layer with fixed weights. So these weights are fixed along the training. And the output of the expansion layer is the actual input to the recurrent units, where we are interested in investigating the geometry. And the output of the RNN at every time step is whether to maintain the fixation, choose right or left. And we also have the expecting return because we train this RNN with reinforcement learning. Okay, so we analyzed all the networks. This is just a subset of networks, and we found a huge heterogeneity across networks. So this is the fraction of correct trials as a function of the training trials. We stopped the training when the network reached an overall performance of 90%. And as you can see already from here, there is a huge heterogeneity. For example, the green network here converges much faster than the other networks, while the red network here takes it's much slower to converge. So I will show you like two example network, the fastest network and the slowest network. And we repeated the same analysis pipeline that we did on the two monkeys. So I will show you first the representational geometry in the first network. So this is the fastest network. The fastest network developed the shape in abstract format here, along with the current response, while the rule and the previous response are not abstract, which resemble the representation in the first monkey. And if we look at the slowest network, here the representational geometry is different because this network developed the rule in abstract format, and now the shape is not abstract. We also looked at the reaction time patterns, and this is the reaction time patterns for the first network, and this network here shows a reaction time patterns that significantly changes with the shape of the visual cue. And while if we look at the second network, the reaction time pattern in the second network actually significantly changes with the rule regardless of the shape. So, okay, we found these are two extreme networks, so which resembles the behavior and the neuronal geometry of the two monkeys. So just for completeness, I want to show you all the networks that we trained. These are 100 networks. So the y-axis is an index, is a CCGP index, where basically the positive value indicates that the network developed the shape in abstract format. Negative value means that the rule is abstract. 0 means that there is no difference in the level of abstraction between shape and rule, as a function of the amount of training trials. And then the color bar tells whether the reaction time patterns is shape dependent or rule dependent. So we found that those networks that actually develop the shape in abstract format are those networks that converge faster. And at the same time, the reaction time of this network with the shape in abstract format is like shape dependent. So with this, I want to conclude. So we study like representational geometries in two subjects before performing the same task with the same behavioral performance. But thanks to the individual differences in the neural geometries, we were able to map the differences at the neuronal level with the reaction time. And these differences might be very informative about different strategies or policies that are adopted by the subjects to solve the same task. And with this, I want to thank all my collaborators and thank you for your attention.
Talk